Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. As you know that in the embryology lectures, nowadays we are covering the development of cardiovascular system. You have already discussed the development of heart and development of the arterial system, in which the very important component we have discussed in previous lecture was the aortic arches and its derivatives along with its congenital anomalies. Now in today's lecture I am moving on to the development of the venous system. So in the development of the venous system, there is the formation of the blood vessels, which are veins, and they are associated with the low oxygen level, low oxygen blood and the venous blood. And in the development of the heart, you have already discussed that there is the sinus venosus, which has two horns, the right and left. The sinus venosus that has this dark shaded left side, left horn of the sinus venosus, and this light one is the right horn of the sinus venosus. So in the middle of the fourth week, the sinus venosus that is going to receive the venous blood from these right and left horns, and each of these horns is going to receive three sets of blood vessels. Number one, they are receiving the vitelline vein on each side, the right and left vitelline veins. Then is the umbilical veins and the common cardinal vein. So these veins, they are going to regress ultimately on the left side. First of all, there is the obliteration of the right umbilical vein and the left vitelline vein in the 5th week of the development, and at the 10th week of the development, its other vein, that is the cardinal vein, it is also going to obliterate, and just it is going to form is the coronary sinus, as you have seen this channel, which is going to become the coronary sinus, and the oblique vein of the atrium, oblique vein of left atrium. Only this is going to be the remnant of the left horn of sinus venosus. And as it is going to become very short and regressed, then the pressure on the right side, it is going to be more, and because of this left to right shunt of the blood, the right horn of the sinus venosus, it is going to become enlarged, and very soon most of its part is incorporated into the wall of the right atrium, which is forming the smooth walled part of the right atrium. So this is responsible to form smooth wall of the right atrium because of the absorption of most of the right horn of sinus venosus into the right atrium. So I hope you already understand it in the lecture. So now further moving on to the components which are going to be formed are the valves of the inferior vena cava. These are just forming the valves of the inferior vena cava at its most caudal or distal part, and later on here there is the formation of rest of inferior vena cava, which is going to be formed by three sources we are going to discuss today. So here you have now the very important concept of the right and left horn of the sinus venosus, which are going to form. So then what rest of the vitelline and the umbilical veins, these are going to form. The vitelline veins, they are going to form the plexus around the duodenum, and then they penetrate into the septum transversum in the rest of the body. So these vitelline veins and umbilical veins, before entering into the right and left horn of the sinus venosus, they are going to form a plexus around the all developing duodenum, and then they penetrate as well into the septum transversum, where they are going to split into the extensive vascular network, which is actually the hepatic sinusoids. So during the development of the liver, you have already seen that the hepatic sinusoids are going to derived and developed from the vitelline and umbilical veins. So these veins, they are giving the hepatic sinusoids there, and also the left sinus horn, when it is going to obliterate and it is reduced in size, then blood from the left side of the liver is going to re-channeled towards the right side, towards the right vessels, and this is giving rise to the enlargement of right vitelline vein. Then we label that vein the right hepatocardiac channel. I will show you in the next diagrams and picture. And this right hepatocardiac channel, this is responsible now to form the hepatocardiac portion of the inferior vena cava, which is going to join the right horn of the sinus venosus, and then it has towards its opening into the right atrium that inferior valves which are formed by the sinus venosus as well. Then there is the portal vein and the superior mesenteric veins. These are also derived from the right vitelline vein. So you can see here that what is going to happen. This is the hepatic bud area. So actually this is giving you the clue here that the area behind this diverticulum is the area of the gut, which is duodenum. That is the developing duodenum. The right umbilical vein and the vitelline vein, you can see here, these are the umbilical veins and these inner one are the vitelline veins. They are going to pass into that septum transversum and split into the sinusoids. So here you can see they are giving rise to the hepatic sinusoid, and before they are going to enter into the sinus venosus, the right and left horns of the sinus venosus, they split into the hepatic sinusoids into septum transversum. So along with the formation of the hepatocardiac channel, as you have seen that there is the formation of the right hepatocardiac channel, there is the formation of rest of the hepatic sinusoids inside the liver, which is already developing in the septum transversum, and the plexus which is around the duodenum. Here mostly you can see these are the vitelline veins. These vitelline veins, out of them the left vitelline vein is going to regress and obliterate completely, and the right sided vitelline vein, this is giving rise to the portal vein and the superior mesenteric vein. So as already you have seen in the arterial system that the vitelline arteries along the yolk sac is responsible to form the major blood vessels of the gut, as foregut has the celiac trunk, the midgut superior mesenteric, and the hindgut inferior mesenteric. These are derived from vitelline arteries. So again here this vitelline vein, that is mainly the right sided right vitelline vein, which is responsible to drain the primary intestinal loop which is developing, and then it is giving here the portal vein and superior mesenteric vein. So what about the left vitelline vein? It regress and obliterate completely. Now moving on to the umbilical veins on both sides, you can see initially right and left umbilical veins, they are going to split inside into the septum transversum to form the hepatic sinusoids. So this is its proximal part, and the rest and remainder portion here you can see that on the right side, the right umbilical vein, it disappears, it is going to regress, and only vein which is responsible to carry blood from placenta, that is the left umbilical vein. So the left umbilical vein, it persists, and This is the only one to carry blood from the placenta to the liver. So with the increase of the placental circulation, then a direct communication of this left umbilical vein, it is established between the left umbilical vein and hepatocardiac channel. So this direct communication, which is developed embryologically between the left umbilical vein and right hepatocardiac channel, this is the ductus venosus. So this vessel is also very important in the fetal life. It is bypassing the blood directly, the blood of placenta directly into the sinus venosus. As you have seen that this plexus and these sinusoids and liver is also on the road of development. So this is developing, this is having its own development. So here is the bypass of the blood this is the blood from placenta directly through this ductus venosus to the right hepatocardiac channel and then into the sinus venosus. So after birth, this is going to represent now as a remnant the ligamentum venosum, and the vein which is left umbilical vein, that is giving rise to the ligamentum teres hepatis. So umbilical vein is also become the obliterated cord as a ligamentum teres hepatis, and this one that is giving rise to the ductus ductus venosus is giving rise to the ligamentum venosum, and the right sided umbilical vein is already obliterated during embryological period. But it after looking into the fate of vitelline and umbilical veins, now the cardinal veins, that is the third channel which is passing into the sinus venosus. These cardinal veins, they are going to form the main venous system, main venous drainage system of the embryo, and it has the anterior cardinal veins which drain the cephalic part of the embryo at the time of development, and the posterior cardinal veins which drain the rest of the embryo. The anterior and posterior cardinal veins, they are going to join together and forming the common cardinal vein, and this common cardinal vein is going to ultimately drain into the sinus venosus. So the anterior cardinal, the posterior cardinal, and its communicating branch, the common cardinal vein, they are draining the rest of the embryo, and they are actually responsible to form the venous system in the human body. And these are, along with the cardinal veins, which are the anterior, posterior and common cardinal vein, the other components are of the veins which are developing. These are developing between the 5th to 7th week of the development. These additional segments of the veins develop in the embryo are the subcardinal vein, which drains the kidney, the sacrocardinal veins draining lower extremities, and the supracardinal veins which drains the body wall and through the intercostal veins in the thoracic region. So in the next slide I am going to, so here you can see the cardinal venous system, the cardinal veins which are here, the anterior cardinal, the posterior cardinal, these one, and this connecting channel, the common cardinal vein, which are the initial veins draining the embryo. Now later on, during 5th to 7th week of the development, additional venous system is additional veins, they are also going to form. These additional veins here you can see is the supracardinal vein, then is this subcardinal vein and the sacrocardinal veins. The supracardinal vein, they are joining the thoracic region, its body wall through the intercostal veins. Then is the subcardinal vein is very close to the kidneys, so they are mostly draining the areas of kidney and forming the renal vein. and the sacrocardinal vein drains the lower extremity. So you can appreciate one very important thing, that in each of these veins there are anastomotic channel between its two right and left sided corresponding vessel. So the right and left anterior cardinal vein are going to have this anastomotic channel which is in between these two vessels. This is going to form left brachiocephalic vein. Here you can see this anastomotic channel is forming the brachiocephalic vein, which is the channel between right and left anterior cardinal vein. So with the establishment of this anastomotic channel in these further, here you can see in the supracardinal vein, in this area the subcardinal and sacrocardinal, there is the further development of the inferior vena cava. They are also helping in formation of that big channel in human body, the inferior vena cava. So the most of the blood from the left sided of head and neck, upper extremity, then you have seen they are going to be entered into this left brachiocephalic vein, and then they are going to enter into the superior vena cava here, which you can appreciate. It is going to formed by the common cardinal vein and contribution of the anterior cardinal vein. So here this is the formation of superior vena cava. So the superior vena cava is formed by right sided common cardinal vein and the proximal part of the right anterior cardinal vein. So this is here which is now forming superior vena cava. And then this its distal portion of the anterior cardinal vein, that is going to form internal jugular vein. Internal jugular vein, that is formed by the distal portion of the anterior cardinal veins. Here you can also see the distal portion is forming here the left internal jugular vein. And here the on the left side, this portion which is the common cardinal vein and the proximal part of the anterior cardinal vein, it obliterated and disappears. Only some posterior part along with this supracardinal vein is forming the superior intercostal vein. Now moving down towards the anastomosis, which is between this subcardinal vein. This anastomosis between the subcardinal vein, that is responsible to form left renal vein. So you have also seen that left renal vein, that is going to have the larger, it is larger course, it is larger. So this anastomosis which is between the subcardinal vein on the left side, it is giving rise the left renal vein. When this is going to establish, then left subcardinal vein disappears and only its distal portion is remained as the left gonadal vein. So when left renal vein is formed, here you can see left renal vein is formed. So here this left subcardinal vein, its this portion, that is the superior portion, or you can say its portion which is portion above that renal vein, is going to disappear, and the distal portion is just forming and remained as the gonadal blood vessels. So you can see here that on the left side the testicular and ovarian veins open into the left renal vein. So it has this embryological basis. Now the right side, this subcardinal vein, that is going to form the renal portion of inferior vena cava. So the renal segment of inferior vena cava, this is going to be formed by the this part of the right subcardinal vein. And you have already seen that there is the right hepatocardiac channel as well, which is forming the hepatocardiac segment of the inferior vena cava, and then this is the renal segment of inferior vena cava. So side by side we are also looking the formation of the inferior vena cava, how it is going to form. Now moving down for this anastomosis, which is between the sacrocardinal vein. So this anastomosis is going to become the left common iliac vein. You can appreciate here that anastomosis between right and left sacrocardinal vein is becoming the left common iliac vein. The right sided sacrocardinal part, that one, this right sacrocardiac part becomes the sacrocardial segment of the inferior vena cava. So inferior vena cava is going to have the hepatic segment, the renal segment, and this sacrocardinal segment, and mostly it is derived from the right sided channels. So right hepatocardiac channel is giving hepatic segment, the right subcardinal vein is giving the renal segment, and right sacrocardinal segment is giving rise to the sacrocardinal segment of inferior vena cava. So they join together and then they are giving rise to a single channel which is having all these components. So far you understand that inferior vena cava is going to develop by these three sources. Now moving on to the posterior cardinal vein, which most of the portion is going to disappear on both sides, and the supracardinal veins, they are going to form here. The mostly you can understand what channels you can see in the thoracic region. So mostly they are giving rise azygous venous system. On the right side, this supracardinal vein is giving rise to the azygous vein, and they are having these tributaries, which are the 4 to 11 right intercostal veins entering inside into these supracardinal vein, and then later on it becomes azygous vein on the right side. So what on the left side, the 4th to 7th intercostal veins, they are going to enter into the left supracardinal vein, and this one is known as hemiazygous vein. Here you can see this is hemiazygous vein, and then they are having this anastomotic channel anastomosis, which you have seen that hemiazygous and accessory hemiazygous are draining initially into the azygous vein and then into superior vena cava. So this subcardinal vein is giving rise on the right side the azygous vein, and on the left side hemiazygous vein. On the right side it is draining 4 to 7 intercostal veins, but on the this one, which is left side, that is left side, yes, on the left side it is giving the hemiazygous vein, which is draining 4 to 7 veins intercostal. So keeping in mind the previous slide of the development of the veins, you can easily understand the anomaly and the congenital problems associated with the venous system. So you have studied the development of inferior vena cava, that it is going to developed by three sources. The right hepatocardiac channel is giving the hepatic segment, the right subcardinal vein is giving the renal segment, and the right sided sacrocardinal vein is giving the sacrocardinal segment, which unites together and making that inferior vena cava. So there is double inferior vena cava. It is present on both right and left side when the left sided sacrocardinal vein fails to lose its connection with left subcardinal vein. So I will show you in next slide. There is the absence of the inferior vena cava. It arises when the right subcardinal vein fails to make its connection with the liver and with its hepatocardiac channel. So you can say that hepatocardiac segment is absent, and the liver, it is shunting. Now you can see here, this one is the picture showing double inferior vena cava, that this portion on the left sided supracardinal vein, it persists and having this connection with the subcardinal vein. So you can say this is the left sided inferior vena cava. And here you can see that portion which is the portion of hepatic segment, it is absent, and the subcardinal vein that is directly going to having its connection with the supracardinal vein, and here you can say there is the absent inferior vena cava, which is towards, actually you can say in the heart, towards the heart there is no inferior vena cava which is entering from its lower side, and it is passing and draining the blood directly into the supracardinal, which becomes a zygous vein, and then into the superior vena cava. So here you can label it the absent inferior vena cava. Now is the superior vena cava. You have talked about that superior vena cava that is going to be formed by the right common cardinal vein and proximal portion of the right interior cardinal vein. So it is double or left. Again you can see the left superior vena cava is the persistence of left interior cardinal vein and obliteration of common cardinal vein here, and proximal part of right anterior cardinal vein. So right sided veins are obliterated and left sided persist. So in this case the blood from the right is channeled toward the left brachiocephalic vein, and then left superior vena cava drains into the right atrium by way of coronary sinus. So that is very important point you must remember. The double superior vena cava is characterized by now the persistence of left anterior cardinal vein on the left side, and failure of the left brachiocephalic vein to form. Along with that there is absent brachiocephalic vein. You can see here that this one is giving rise to the left superior vena cava because of persistence of left anterior cardinal vein, and it drains into the coronary sinus. And right sided venous blood is drained through this right brachiocephalic vein. And if it is double inferior vena cava, so definitely on the right it is going to be formed normally, but on the left side there is the persistent left interior cardinal vein, but that anastomotic channel is missing, the brachiocephalic vein is absent. So if it is again formed in double superior vena cava, the left sided vein is draining into coronary sinus. So now there is the next very important topic, that is fetal circulation. And in this fetal circulation and then forming the adult remnants, that is very interesting, and I hope you know it very well. First of all, here we have seen in the fetal life there is formation of that ductus venosus. This ductus venosus, that is the channel which is connecting the right umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava. So this is shunting the blood. This ductus venosus is present. Then there is the ductus arteriosus. The ductus arteriosus here, which is the channel between the left pulmonary artery and arch of aorta. Ductus arteriosus you have appreciated, and very important during development of heart. On its development of right atrium, you have seen there is foramen ovale. So these three important, the ductus arteriosus, the ductus venosus, and foramen ovale, these are the very important channels which are present in the fetal life. So for the fetal circulation, you know very well that there is the placenta which is helping for the saturation of the blood in the fetal blood vessels. So after saturation, the blood, which is almost 80% saturated, it enters into the umbilical veins, and through the umbilical veins this is passing towards the liver, and just its entrance of the umbilical vein into the ductus venosus, there is one sphincter that is present, and here the blood is directly shunted from this umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava through ductus venosus. And here at this entrance you can see this sphincter is present, which is very important for the transporting blood into the ductus venosus. And it is important when there is uterine contraction to prevent the overloading of the heart. This is closes. So this sphincter closes during uterine contraction and then reduces the blood flow. Passing through this ductus venosus and then inferior vena cava, the blood enters into the right atrium of the heart. But here it also not going to stay longer. It is assisted into the left atrium of the heart directly through this foramen ovale. And here the valve of inferior vena cava is very important, which is guiding the blood to pass into the foramen ovale and then enters into the left atrium. So this is directly shunting blood into the left atrium. But here the blood is the venous blood from the head and neck region passing through the superior vena cava mixes with the blood which is through the inferior vena cava. From this left atrium, blood enters into the left ventricle and then through the aorta. It is going to transport it to whole of the body, but as it is passing down and moving distally towards the placenta, its oxygenation is going to reduce as it is consumed by the developing organs. And here this is when you see towards the liver. At the fetal life, the pulmonary resistance is very high, so the blood is directly shunted through the ductus arteriosus into the aorta. So this blood is again going to shunted by ductus arteriosus because of high resistance in the liver. It enters into the descending aorta. Then again here it is going and transported towards the placenta for further oxygenation, as you have seen. So this is the fetal circulation. So there are the areas where this saturated blood is going to mix with the venous blood. So there is a mixture at the time when blood is returning from the portal system here at this area of the liver in this ductus venosus. Some portal venous blood is returned here, so it mixes with the saturated blood. Then at this area of the superior vena cava, which is from where the blood is returning from the head and neck region. Also the blood from the lower extremity, you can see here the lower extremity blood that is passing through the inferior vena cava. It is going to be mixing here with the rest of the saturated blood shunted through ductus arteriosus. And there is the mixture of the blood which is returning from the lungs. So from the lungs at this site there is also at the entrance of ductus arteriosus into descending aorta, here is again some mixing of the blood with unsaturated deoxygenated blood. So these are the four areas: this portal venous, this inferior vena cava carrying the blood from lower extremity, mixing it here with the blood which is directly coming through the placenta. Then superior vena cava is sending deoxygenated blood from upper areas from the head and neck region, and the deoxygenated blood of the lungs mixing here near the ductus arteriosus. So again these areas are having the mixing of venous blood, and then there is the absorption of the oxygen into the developing organs. So there is now the blood, when it is moving distally, it has losing its oxygen. So this is all about the fetal circulation. It is very important. Many times in university there is a question right about the fetal circulation along with its remnant, which we are going to discuss in further slides. So fetal circulation, that is very easy to understand. It is very important. So these fetal components, which are having very important role during fetal circulations, these are going to close after birth. So there are the circulatory changes at the time of the birth, which is because of the decrease in the blood from the placenta. So placental blood flow is decreased, and the respiratory changes from the lungs that are going to responsible for the certain circulatory changes, which are resulting in closure of these fetal components. So first of all, very important that foramen ovale, I hope you understand it very well in the lecture of the development of hearts, that the foramen ovale on the shunt between the right and left atrium, it closes shortly after birth because of the pressure effects. So the pressure on the right sided decreases, and on the left side, in the left atrium, there is increase in the pressure. So because of the increase on the pressure on the left side, the septum primum approximated with the septum secundum, and it is completely closing the foramen ovale. This foramen ovale, it closes, and then it becomes the adult remnant. You have seen in the posterior wall of the right atrium as fossa ovalis. Then is the ductus arteriosus, which is closes soon after birth, and this is because of the contraction of the muscles present in its wall. So the muscular wall that is contracted, and this is also mediated by the release of the bradykinin from the lungs. So when the lungs start functioning, there is release of bradykinin. It also induces the closure of ductus arteriosus by contraction of the muscle in the wall of this channel. So it becomes the ligamentum arteriosum. It closes soon after birth, but to become a complete fibrosed ligament, it takes 1 to 3 months. So after 3 months of the birth, it completely become ligamentous. So this is ligamentum arteriosum in adults. The ductus venosus, as well as its respective umbilical vein, it is going to become fibrosed and obliterated after birth because of the pressure changes. Also there is decrease, and there is actually no flow from the placenta, no blood flow is from the placental side. So decrease in the blood flow from the placenta is regressing the ductus venosus and umbilical vein as well as its umbilical arteries. The ductus venosus, it becomes ligamentum venosum again because of the contraction of the muscle in the valve in its tunica media. So this is going to become the ligamentum venosum, and the umbilical vein, it is represented as ligamentum teres hepatis. The umbilical arteries on both sides, they are also regressed, but mostly you have seen the distal portion of umbilical artery, they become medial umbilical ligament, and it is again going to happen because of the contraction of muscles in the tunica media, and they become fibrosed. But the proximal portion of these vessels, they remain open and they persist as superior vesical artery. And I have told you during the aortic. And this picture is showing you the circulation after birth, in which you can appreciate easily there is no placenta, and this one, which is the area of the umbilicus. Here this umbilical vein, that is going to become the ligamentum teres hepatis from liver to the umbilicus, and the ductus venosus becoming fibrosed ligamentum venosum. Then is the closure of the foramen ovale here in this area, which you can see. There is the ductus arteriosus, which is also becoming fibrosed as ligamentum arteriosum. the circulation towards the lungs that is increasing because of decrease in vascular resistance. And now you can see there is establishment of two hearts, the right sided venous heart dealing with the low oxygenated blood, and the left sided arterial end and having high oxygen content, and it is connected with the main aorta to supply the blood towards the rest of the body. So this is showing you all the circulation which is after birth. And yes, definitely you can see here the umbilical arteries where they are going to be fibrosed, become ligamentous as medial umbilical ligament, but these portions which are the proximal portions, the distal portions become medial umbilical ligament, and these one which are these proximal parts, they are becoming the superior vesical artery. This is going towards the urinary bladder, and this is the superior vesical artery which are the adult. So what are the important pulmonary changes which are responsible for the changes in fetal circulation and converting it into the adult circulation after birth? These pulmonary changes which are going to happen at the time of birth is decrease in pulmonary vascular resistance. So when there is decrease in pulmonary vascular resistance, the flow of blood towards the lungs that increases, so it helps in the obliteration of ductus arteriosus. So there is marked increase in the blood flow to the lungs. So progressive thinning out of the walls of the pulmonary arteries, and these arteries, these are because of the stretching as the lung increases in size after the few breaths. So because of the crying and when the baby is taking breath, there is decrease in the pulmonary vascular resistance, increases pulmonary blood flow, and the walls of the pulmonary arteries, they are going to become very thin. So these are the important pulmonary changes. So along with the development of the blood vessels, definitely there are the lymphatic channels and the lymphatic system that is developing side by side. So you must remember the important point. You can have any MCQ from this portion. So first of all, there are 6 primary lymph sacs. They are going to be present at the embryonic time. So during embryonic period, what are these 6 primary lymph sacs? You must remember 2 in the head and neck region, which are the 2 jugular lymph sacs near the junction of subclavian vein with anterior cardinal vein, which is going to become future internal jugular vein. So at its junction, there is 2 jugular lymph sacs. There is the 2 iliac lymph sacs in the draining the lower extremity. This is at the junction of the iliac vein with the posterior cardinal vein. The 5th one is the retroperitoneal lymph sac present in the root of the mesentery along posterior abdominal wall, and cisterna chyli, which is located dorsal to the retroperitoneal sac present in the mesentery. So 2 jugular lymph sacs, 2 iliac, 1 retroperitoneal and 1 cisterna chyli. You must remember initially these are. So there are 2 lymphatic channels which are passing on both sides, on the right and left side, but how these thoracic duct is going to form by these right and left thoracic channels. So thoracic duct is formed by the caudal part of the right thoracic duct. So right sided duct, it persists only at its distal portion, rest whole of its portion is going to it is not participating in formation of thoracic duct. There is an anastomosis which is between right and left one, it persists, and the cranial part of the left thoracic duct. So you have already seen in the thoracic region, in the gross anatomy of thorax, that initially from the cisterna chyli, the thoracic duct has a right only present on the right side. So this is the portion the caudal part, which persists as that right component of the thoracic, right-sided course of the thoracic duct. Then above the right hilum and right root of the lung, there it is going to shift from right to left side. Its course is then from right to left, that is this anastomotic channel, and then it is draining into its left sided venous angle, that is this only cranial part of left thoracic duct which persists, and these three portions are becoming the thoracic duct. The thoracic channel, which is on the right side, its caudal portion is making up the thoracic duct, but its cranial portion persists as right lymphatic duct. I will show you the diagram in the next slide, don't worry. And the thoracic duct and right lymphatic ducts, they are going to connect with the venous system, draining its lymph into the venous system at venous angle, which is between the internal jugular vein and subclavian. Here in the next slide that initially at the end of embryonic period you are going to have two jugular lymph sac, then is this retroperitoneal sac and this cisterna chyli, and then two iliac lymph sacs, right? These were the 6 lymph sacs which are present initially. Then from these lymph sacs the lymphatic channel is going to form. Initially there is the lymphatic channel present, the right and left lymphatic channel. These are the thoracic ducts actually, right and left one. So what is going to happen? The left sided is mostly going to disappear and regress, as you can see here the dotted line. This is forming the thoracic duct, and there is this anastomotic channel between right and left duct. So the caudal portion of the right sided lymphatic channel, it persists as thoracic duct. Then this anastomotic channel, which is showing its course as it is moving from right to left side above the hilum of the lung, you have noted it in the thorax. And then this one portion which is ultimately draining into the venous angle on left side, this is the cranial portion of left sided lymphatic channel. The right sided lymphatic channel only persists at its cranial most portion as right lymphatic duct. So these all are draining the upper limb, the head and neck and the thorax. This is the cisterna chyli which is going to be present, and the retroperitoneal sacs which are present in the mesentery, they are draining the lymph from the intestinal loop, and these trunks which are present, the iliac ones, these iliac lymph sacs are draining the lower extremities. So that's how the lymphatic channels are developing. You understand, very important, you must remember the thoracic duct. The most important congenital anomaly associated with lymphatic system is cystic hygroma. So this is the cyst-like sacs which are pinched off from jugular lymph sacs, and they loses their connection from the whole of the lymphatic channels, and they become separated. So these cyst-like fluid-filled cavities, they are mostly appearing in the neck region. So mostly the jugular lymph sacs, they are going to form the cystic hygroma in the inferior lateral part of the neck, and here they become large, multilocular and fluid filled because of the fluid present in that cyst, and they are going to lose their connection from rest of the lymphatic channel. So most hygromas, they are derived from abnormal transformation of the jugular lymph sacs, you must remember, and that is the main cause, and mostly they are appearing the large swellings along the inferior lateral part of the neck. So that is very important point you must remember. So this is only one anomaly associated with the development of lymphatic system. So after this lecture we have completely end up with the syllabus of development of cardiovascular system. Hope you understand it very well, but if still you have any problem or query and you want to ask any question, you can contact me anytime. Thank you very much, my dear students. Best of luck.